What if the person you're drawn to is exactly the person who will hurt you? You've done it again. You swore the last time was the final time. You told yourself you knew the signs. You promised you'd walk away at the first red flag. And yet here you are, in another relationship that feels painfully familiar. Different name, different face, same pattern. You're not unlucky. You're not broken. And no, the universe isn't punishing you. There is a reason you keep attracting the wrong person. And it has nothing to do with fate and everything to do with the invisible architecture of your own mind. Today, we're uncovering the 5 psychological patterns that pull you toward the people who are worst for you. And the most disturbing part? Every single one of these patterns feels like love. Before we expose each pattern, you need to understand something fundamental about how human attraction actually works. We like to believe we choose our partners rationally. We think we evaluate qualities like kindness, ambition, compatibility, and shared values. And on the surface, we do. But underneath that conscious process, something far more powerful is operating. Your subconscious mind is running a matching algorithm that has nothing to do with what you think you want and everything to do with what you experienced as a child. A landmark 2019 study from the University of Toronto analyzed the personality traits of over 12,000 romantic partners across multiple relationships. The finding was staggering. 95% of people chose partners with statistically similar personality profiles across different relationships. Not similar looks, not similar careers, similar psychological patterns. You're not choosing the wrong person. You're choosing the same emotional blueprint over and over again. And until you understand why, you will keep repeating the cycle. The first pattern is one of the most misunderstood concepts in all of psychology. It's called trauma bonding, and it explains why so many people feel the deepest connection with the people who treat them the worst. Here's how it works. In a healthy relationship, affection is consistent and predictable. You know what to expect. But in a trauma bond, affection is intermittent and unpredictable. One day they're showering you with love. The next day they're cold, distant, or cruel. This cycle of hot and cold triggers a neurochemical response identical to gambling addiction. Your brain releases dopamine not when you receive love, but when you anticipate it. The uncertainty itself becomes the drug. A 2020 study in neuroscience and biobehavioral reviews found that intermittent reinforcement creates bonds that are 3 to 4 times stronger than consistent positive reinforcement. In other words, the person who makes you feel the most anxious is often the person you feel most bonded to. This is why victims of emotional abuse often describe the relationship as the most intense love they've ever felt. Because neurologically, it was. The pain and the pleasure became inseparable. The second pattern runs even deeper. It's rooted in the first relationship you ever had, the one with your primary caregiver. Attachment theory, developed by psychologist John Bowlby and later expanded by Mary Ainsworth, identifies 4 attachment styles that form in childhood and persist throughout adult relationships: secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. Here's what the research consistently shows. People with anxious attachment are magnetically drawn to partners with avoidant attachment, and partners with avoidant attachment are drawn right back. Why? Because each person unconsciously recreates the emotional dynamic they experienced with their caregiver. The anxious person learned that love requires chasing, proving, and earning. The avoidant person learned that closeness is dangerous and must be kept at arm's length. When they meet, the anxious person interprets the avoidant person's emotional distance as a challenge, something to be won, and the avoidant person interprets the anxious person's intensity as overwhelming, something to escape from. The result is a push-pull cycle that both people mistake for passion. It feels exciting. It feels electric. But it's not chemistry. It's around recognizing itself in someone else. Dr. Amir Levine, author of the book Attached, estimates that approximately 50% of the adult population has an insecure attachment style. That means half the people you could potentially date are carrying attachment wounds that will activate yours. The third pattern is perhaps the most unsettling of all. Sigmund Freud identified it over a century ago, and modern neuroscience has confirmed it's very real. It's called repetition compulsion. Repetition compulsion is the unconscious drive to recreate unresolved childhood experiences in adult relationships. Not to relive the pain, but to finally fix it. Your subconscious mind is essentially running a program that says if I can find someone who resembles the person who originally hurt me, and if I can get that new person to love me the way the original person didn't, then I'll be healed. It's a repair fantasy, and it never works. Because you're not choosing a partner. You're casting someone in a role they didn't audition for. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Clinical Psychology found that adults who experienced emotional neglect in childhood were 2.6 times more likely to enter relationships with emotionally unavailable partners. Not by accident, by unconscious design. The cruel irony is that the more urgently you need healing, the more precisely you'll select the person least capable of providing it. Because that's the blueprint your brain is following. The fourth pattern exploits one of the most powerful forces in human psychology: familiarity. Your brain is wired to prefer what it recognizes over what is objectively better for you. In evolutionary terms, familiar equals safe. Unfamiliar equals potential threat. And this ancient programming doesn't turn off when you walk into a bar or open a dating app. This is why people who grew up with chaos feel uncomfortable in stable relationships. This is why people who were raised by critical parents end up with critical partners. And this is why people who experienced emotional deprivation are bored by partners who are emotionally available. The problem isn't that you can't recognize a good partner. The problem is that a good partner feels wrong. Research from UCLA's Relationship Lab found that when participants were presented with potential partners, they consistently rated familiar personality types as more attractive, even when those personality types were objectively less compatible with their stated preferences. They didn't just prefer the familiar, they were genuinely more attracted to it. This creates a devastating paradox. The healthy partner feels like a stranger. The unhealthy partner feels like home. And because your brain equates familiarity with safety, you keep choosing the person who feels right over the person who actually is right. The fifth and final pattern is perhaps the most painful to confront. It's called self-worth calibration, and it determines the ceiling of love you believe you deserve. Here's the mechanism. Every person carries an internal meter that measures how much love, respect, and care they believe they're entitled to receive. This meter was calibrated in childhood by the way you were treated by the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. If you were consistently criticized, you calibrated your meter to expect criticism. If you were ignored, you calibrated it to expect indifference. If you were loved conditionally, you calibrated it to believe love must be earned. Now here's where it gets insidious. When someone treats you significantly better than your internal calibration, your brain doesn't register it as wonderful. It registers it as suspicious. Something must be wrong with this person if they think I deserve this much love. Dr. Nathaniel Branden, one of the pioneers of self-esteem research, wrote that we tend to feel most comfortable with people who match our self-concept. If you don't believe you deserve consistent kindness, you will unconsciously reject it when it appears. A 2022 meta-analysis in Psychological Bulletin found that self-esteem was the single strongest predictor of relationship satisfaction, ahead of communication skills, conflict resolution, and even sexual compatibility. The relationship you're in is a direct reflection of the relationship you have with yourself. So what do you do with all of this? How do you break a pattern that's been running since before you could even form memories? The answer isn't to avoid relationships, and it isn't to analyze every potential partner like a psychology textbook. The answer is to rewire the internal system that's been making these choices for you. First, identify your attachment style. Take a validated assessment. Understand whether you lean anxious, avoidant, or disorganized. This single piece of self-knowledge changes everything. Second, learn to tolerate discomfort with healthy partners. If someone treats you well and it feels boring or suspicious, that's not a red flag about them. That's information about you. Third, work with a therapist who specializes in attachment. This is not something you can think your way out of alone. The patterns live in your nervous system, not just your conscious mind. And finally, pay attention to how you feel in your body. Anxiety is not attraction. Obsession is not passion. If a relationship keeps you in a constant state of uncertainty, that's not love. That's a trauma response wearing love's clothing. If this video made you see your own patterns differently, hit that subscribe button. We break down the hidden psychology behind everything you do. Every week, a new documentary that reveals the invisible forces shaping your life, your relationships, and your decisions. Which of these 5 patterns hit closest to home for you? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one.